Right, let's get more on this right now and speak to Johnny Nelson. He's already smiling at those quotes. Of course, former World Cruiserweight Champion and Sky Sports' very own. Johnny, I spoke to you just a few days ago, didn't I, when we'd heard about this, but it wasn't official. It's now official. How huge is it that Jake Paul can land a fight with a very recent heavyweight world champion?
Well, by the sounds of it, there's 50 million reasons why Anthony Joshua's taking this fight. In my head, I never, ever thought this fight would happen. Why? Because of Anthony Joshua's desire to be in the history books, to be a three-time heavyweight champion of the world. To me, it shows me his desire. Pick up 50 million along the way. Nobody can knock him for this. This is now business. This is business. For Jake Paul, absolutely crazy. Jake Paul is a domestic level professional fighter here in the UK. Would he win a British title? No, I don't think so. So now they're putting this domestic level fighter in with a former heavyweight two-time champion of the world. The weight is 245. So I think last time Anthony Joshua weighed around that was when he boxed Usyk. That means he's got to be fight fit on point, because his last fight was 18 stone. I think it was 254 against Danny Dubois. So now he basically saying you've got to get yourself in position, get yourself fit, and get yourself ready for fight. It's not tiddlywinks. This is a fight. It's not a push and a pull. You know, so as long as it's not a push and a pull, and don't put me down and don't touch me in the build up to this fight. You know, remember when McGregor and Mayweather, they had this little side deal, don't touch me in the build up to this. If this is a real legitimate fight, Jake Paul is absolutely crazy. If not crazy, he's super brave. And it'll be interesting to see.
Well, what do you think? Yeah, because you said that before when we spoke about it being a proper fight or not. And Eddie Hearn and Paul's promoter, Nakisa Bidarian, have both said in the last couple of days it will be a proper fight. And now you've heard the details. 8 rounds, 3 minutes around, 10-ounce gloves. Do you believe it when they say that it's going to be a proper fight?
I do believe it because AJ is involved, and I think AJ would struggle to. He's going to take enough flack over this, but again, it's money talk. So I think AJ will struggle because it is an Owen situation. If he goes in there, Jake Paul lasted the distance. What does he tell you about AJ? Apart from he's just earned an extra 15 million quid. If he goes there and struggles with Jake Paul, then what do you say about AJ? Your heydays are well and truly over. If he goes in there and knocks him out, then I'll say that's to be expected. So the glory, there's probably not much glory in it, apart from the haters of Jake Paul to say, right, we've got rid of this kid. I think it's very brave of Jake Paul. So now the problem child has got us to believe this fight's actually happening. So now you've got our attention. So now you've got to back up the boast. It's not about you're not playing tiddlywink. This is the only game you can't play. You can play football, golf, tennis. You can't play boxing because you get knocked out and you get really hurt.
So you think this could be dangerous for Jake Paul?
Oh my goodness, without a doubt. Now the governing bodies now have got to look at this. Would they sanction this fight in any other dimension? No, they wouldn't. But unfortunately, boxing is now more business than show. And this is business. And so the sanctioning bodies aren't going to say, no, this kid doesn't deserve to be there. You look at this fight here. This guy got the merit because he was the top of his field in his sport. Jake Paul is not the top of any field in any combat sport, not in our sport. But now he's made that transition. Why? Because he gets the numbers, he gets the big broadcast, and he gets the attention of the public and the world for this. Now, most people will watch this to hopefully see Jake Paul get his mouth shut. And they hope Anthony Joshua, this version, what we're watching of Anthony Joshua, turns up. If that version of Anthony Joshua turns up, then it's going to be a comfortable, smug night for any boxing snobbery that's going on. If any other version of Anthony Joshua turns up and he struggles with Jake Paul, then Anthony Joshua needs to think to himself, wow, you know what, I've turned into a businessman. Because that's what it is. He's a bounty hunter. That's what it is. It's a prize fighter.
What does this mean for AJ's future then in terms of future fights? Do you think this signals that he might not fight again at World Championship level, or do you think he can still go on to World Championship fight after fighting Jake Paul?
Well, let's be real. I think Anthony Joshua's days of becoming a world champion have gotten slimmer and slimmer, and the chances have gotten smaller and smaller. And now I don't know if he's still ranked in the top 10, but he's still the biggest draw out there. Like it or not, he's the biggest draw out there. So getting a legitimate opportunity to box for a world title, are probably getting further and further away. The biggest fighter there for him is probably against, apart from Jake Paul, Tyson Fury. That's it. To fight for the world title, it's quite clear the champion is not going to be that champion. So he's making more money, making more headlines than any world champion out there, and he's not even boxing the world title. So this is business. It's good business. But, I think for both Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, they've taken advantage of a situation that is the state of boxing as it is today.
Yeah, as you say, it's business. A lot of people, boxing fans, will criticise Anthony Joshua for doing this, for taking this fight, which you say is for business, for money, as opposed to a more serious contender. Can you see why people would make that point?
Without a doubt, Anthony Joshua got knocked out against Danny Dubois. You'd think straight away, well, let me get back in that fight. I'm better than this boy. But he hasn't said that. So maybe he's thinking, you know what, I've probably seen my best days. I'll never be able to say that out open and publicly. I've probably seen my best days. So I've got to do the best I can with what I've got left. Because in reality, most people say, get me back in with Danny Dubois. Let's have this fight. Let's have it. But he's thinking, all right, this kid's better than what I thought. I'm not at that level anymore. It's a hard thing to accept if you used to be a heavyweight champion. You thought that you were the best in the world. So now getting in there with Jake Paul, yes, he knows he's going to get flagged. Yes, he knows he's probably upset one or two traditional fans to say, why are you doing this? But in reality, he's getting in there with someone that's stupid enough that can generate £50 million plus for him to knock him out. Then he moves on. So, and anybody that is honest with themselves, they're not going to turn it down. Nobody on this earth will turn it down. So we can all point the finger and say, why have you done that? But nobody on this God's green earth would turn that opportunity down. It's just that Anthony Joshua, you think, if you're going to do the job, get the job done, get him out of here and get on with your business.
Johnny, is there any way you think that Jake Paul could cause a massive upset here? I know a lot of people will think about his fight with Tommy Fury, but his last fight was actually against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who was a former world champion, and he beat him. Is there any way he might be better than a lot of people think when he turns up to fight AJ?
Listen, he is a decent domestic level fighter. He's no longer a YouTuber boxing. He's a decent domestic level fighter. Now he has an opportunity to go in there with a slightly faded world champion because AJ's not a world champion anymore. I'm not saying he's shot, I'm not saying he's faded. He's just below that level now. So now this young man has got an opportunity to get in there with him. Now, the only way this is going to happen where he gets turned over is if Anthony Joshua does what he's done before and leaves his tools at home like he did with Danny Dubois, like he did with Andrew Ruiz. Well, like that's the only way. Can I see Anthony Joshua doing that? No, because there's far too much pressure on him. For this is far too much pressure. And he has to come in at a supreme weight. The weight he came in against Alexander Usyk, that means he's trained. He's got the weight down. So therefore, he's not going to come in and think, this is the pushover. He's going to have a nice, cool swagger about him thinking, I'm going to get this job done. But in his head, he's got to say, I've got to be serious and on point here, because if you give a man a chance that hasn't got one, then you've got a problem.
And the other thing I wanted to touch on here was how Jake Paul will have prepared for this fight, because he was preparing to fight Gervonta Davis, who's 5'5". He's about half the weight of Anthony Joshua. How do you go from preparing to fight that guy to fighting a massive heavyweight like AJ?
Well, it's a little tweak. I'm not saying Davis is a little tweak, but what I'm saying is, you're going to be gym fit, so you're in there. So all you do is change your sparring partners. You change your direction. There's enough time to get that done. December the 19th is what they're looking at. Now you're gym fit. Now you have to just change your game plan to figure out how you're going to do it. Decide with your opponents on what they do and what they bring into it. I just want to make sure I'm not wrong where there are no clauses in this fight that we're not to know about. We saw Jake Paul against Mike Tyson. We saw him against Anderson Silva. We've seen him in fights like that, and you thought, a bit sus here. I just think I could be surprised, because I'm surprised now. I just think Anthony Joshua will struggle to play that game, because this affects him. And Anthony Joshua is bigger than Jake Paul in our world. So there'll be more of a judgment on Anthony Joshua than there will be on Jake Paul, because Anthony Joshua is expected to get this boy blasted out of there.
Final question, Johnny, you know what's coming. If this is a proper fight, if Anthony Joshua is taking this seriously, what do you think happens?
I'd expect exactly the same thing that happened against Ngannou. I'd expect Jake Paul to get knocked out, if not saved by the referee. I think Jake Paul's a very brave, ambitious young man who's got a great business head on his shoulder. I think everything he's done in our game, he's got our attention. Now he's really got our attention. So I commend him. I respect him for doing that because he's understood the business of our game when it's usually the fighters that end up on the sour end of the stick. So for Jake Paul, well done. The job is done. For Anthony Joshua, get the job done and show the difference in class, real class, and domestic class.